All right. Well, welcome to the Jeff and Sarah Show. And so today, thank you to Pastor Bob for quickening us and giving us an entire week to... oh, was it Pastor Deb? Okay. Well, thank you very much. So you don't have to relay the message now. But so as you could probably guess from what's on the board here, we're going to be talking about matrimonial money. And contrary to what Vince thought that meant, we are not talking about that you're supposed to find a rich spouse. So it's not a bad idea, but that is not what we're going to be talking about today. So regardless of socioeconomic status, if God's called you to marry someone, then you do that. So but it never hurts. So, but what we're going to be talking to you about today. So I think most everybody knows. I think we got a reputation, but that we're interested in personal finance and biblical finance, and some may say it's a strength. But we thought we would share our journey, because not everybody here knew us when we were 10 or 15, 20, so we're in our 30s now. We'll just leave it at that. Time flies, but I used to think that was pretty old, but here I am, or here we are. So I do have to say, though, that I did marry an older woman. So that speaks to my maturity and eloquence. So I'm just beyond my years. And okay, that I better move on from that. Yeah, exactly. But just talk, because a lot of you have known us for the past, I don't know if it's been 8 or 9 years or something we've been coming here. So I thought it'd be fun to share kind of both of our pasts as individuals in regards to finances, and then just kind of share our journey, where we, how we grew up, and then, all the milestones, and then all the way until we got to today. And of course, there's going to be some teaching intermixed in that too. So that's the plan for today. So if you don't like it, you can leave. So. Caleb, get back. Sit back down. So, and we are gonna have. I know we have communion left, so we're gonna do that at the end. So we'll be conscious of time. Aaron took all our time, but that's okay.
That was Kaylee.
Okay. We'll blame it on the kid. Geez, that's nice. But we would like to have a short Q&A at the end. So it's going to be an informal session today. So I'm going to be up, maybe drawing on the board every once in a while. If you guys have an itching question that you just have to get out, as long as it's appropriate, you can ask it during the middle. That's fine. But I just want to let you know that at the end for Q&A, we will not let you leave for lunch until we get a couple questions. So just forewarning that, so it doesn't have an awkward silence when we ask for questions at the end, that just be thinking of questions, and it can be related to money.
No questions about mosquitoes. I don't think I'll be able to gather myself if we do that.
Does everybody remember? I don't know how you can forget, but okay. But anyway, okay. But if you don't know what we're talking, we're not going to go into it. If you don't know, just listen to Pastor Bob's message last week. So it was quite entertaining. So all right, well let's get started. So I want everybody. This is a church, so don't get nervous when I ask this. I want everybody to reach into your wallet, and I want you to pull out a bill. For those of you who carry cash, if you don't carry cash, then that kind of ruins the example, but that's okay. Or pull out your debit card, or preferably a wallet. Cash. You don't got anything, Caleb? Nope. All right. Well, just pretend like you got some dollar bills in there.
I have a $300 bill.
The 300. That's a very expensive. So what we're gonna do this again at the end. And so what I want to do is I want everybody to look at their dollar bill, or their $10 bill, or $100, or $1,000 bill if you happen to come across one of those. I'd be skeptical, but. I want you to think, okay, how do I view this? What do I view this bill as? What's my vision for this money here? What's my plan for this money? And so what we're going to do is, at the end, we're going to come back to that, and we're going to see, and if it does or if it doesn't, it's not right or wrong. We're going to see if maybe your view of what that is and the plans that you had for it changed. Now, that's not saying that if you were planning on buying lunch with it that you have to not eat lunch, but let's just kind of just a thought experiment. And if nothing happens, it's not wrong. If something does happen, it's not wrong. So just kind of a little experiment here. So, all right. So without further ado, so we're going to share a little bit about our nature, kind of going back all the way to when we were younger and everything. So I'm going to let Miss Sarah go first. And Miss Sarah, can you please share your when you were a young lad that lass? Okay. Well, you think I know that in this day and age, but a young lass and your money, kind of your nature and your upbringing. So.
Okay. So I think between the two of us, I think you all know we have a little bit of a reputation in our financial relationship, I guess. So I'm probably...
It's a good one.
It's what? The reputation?
Yes.
Well, just our difference. So, and that difference started when we were young. My thoughts on money was if I had it, it was there to spend, okay? It was there to enjoy it. I had a couple... Well, probably not until I was in junior high, maybe high school, I think even, was my first job. So I didn't really work that much. I had a lot of athletics I participated in, so that was kind of my job, so to speak. So, occasionally I'd get some money in, or like birthday money, and it would burn a hole in my pocket. Like, literally, I needed to go spend it. That's the way I thought about
literally
money.
Your pants went up in flames?
No.
Is that what you're saying?
No, not literally. That's the mindset I had, though. Like, it's there. I need to spend it. I need to get rid of it. Turn it into something else quick. And it wasn't turn it into an investment. I never even thought about that, probably until after we got married. So that mindset did not lend itself to patience, I guess, to put it simply. If I did have patience, it was forced upon me through lack and through poor planning because I wasn't saving anything. So if I wanted something, I had to wait until I had the money to do it. And then looking at giving at church, the way that I grew up was just, you put money in the offering plate. That was encouraged, but it was more of just, well, you just give out of what you have on hand. I didn't have any forethought to my giving or anything like that. It was just, well, I've got this in my purse or my pocket, and so I'm going to put it in and give it to God because I knew I was supposed to. I just didn't necessarily have the scripture to back it up or the methods to apply to my giving. And I didn't really have an understanding of tithing. Like, what I was taught more, what I thought of, maybe this is my interpretation of what was taught, was tithes and offerings it was the same thing. I didn't know it was the tithe meant 10%. I didn't know that until probably college, maybe late years in high school. I didn't understand that it was a certain percentage and that God actually had a plan for my finances and that I could get wisdom from his word. And the other thing is, growing up, I thought that the only way I could live a comfortable financial life was to make tons and tons and tons of money. Like, I was telling Jeff last night, like, I thought I was going to be a professional athlete, so I thought I'd have enough money for anything I wanted. Either that or I was going to have to marry a professional athlete. That was my plan. And Jeff said I got neither. Neither worked out for me, but it worked out even better.
Either one of us either, because, I mean, it's always good to dream, but you're a 5'8" white girl, and I don't think you're going to make it real well in the WNBA. So
this is true. It's true. It's true. But I mean, that was my thought. I just had to make a lot of money. It wasn't that God had a plan for my finances and that I could get the wisdom out of his word to have success. So I guess you could say that my finances were perishing for lack of knowledge, right? Hosea 4:6. I didn't know any better. So that's kind of a little bit of my background and spending nature.
All right. Would you like to hear mine?
I'd like to hear yours,
okay,
even though I know it, but they might like to hear it too.
Well, I mean, I think most people kind of know my nature just from the reputation, but it is, I would like to say it is a good reputation, And she's actually, well, so yeah, yeah. So yeah, growing up, I was always a worker. I was always a saver. I can remember, obviously, I think most of you know my parents owned the roller rink here in town, and so I, working even at a young age, I would want to work. I would want to go upstairs and repair roller skates and, get that dollarly wage. And, eventually my dad was like, well, how about you focus on like how many skates you repair per hour? But, that was a good lesson to learn. But, just refereeing soccer games and teaching tennis lessons, all through high school I did that. So, but I've always been a saver. I went to work to get the money, not necessarily, I didn't think of it as something to spend. I thought it was more something to save and something to grow, not necessarily, it comes in one pocket and out the other. It was not burning my pants off when I was younger. So
You had to go buy new ones.
I know, exactly, and that's even more expensive. So, we always joked that, I had the money for Sarah's engagement ring when I was 10 years old. So, but that's, I was just a saver, and I thought, okay, I could use this money to do lots of different things. I mean, my parents, when I was very young, taught me to tithe. So as far back as I can remember, whether it was allowance that I got or, repairing stuff, I'd always tithe. And so they did actually, they taught me that, okay, 10%, so you'd calculate it out and everything, and so I tithe it. So you can kind of see, compare and contrast different ways of thinking. And, with that money, I would think, okay, you guys remember hacky sacks? In the 90s, it was a pretty big thing. And so I'd go to buy a hacky sack. I was like, man, this is just way too expensive. And so, yeah, like $10. It was just way too expensive. But, when you're 10, that's like $1,000 now. So, but so I was like, what, I'm going to do something. I'm going to do something about this. And so what I would do is, I went to, those catalogs that you can buy, like I think it was like import China stuff or something, but novelty items, and there would be hacky sacks in there. So I bought it. I'd ask my dad. I was like, hey, can I buy these in bulk and then sell it at the rink? And so what I would do is I would sell those things. Now keep in mind, this isn't when I was 20 years old, because that wouldn't be a lot of money for a 20-year-old. But I was in grade school, and so but early on my mind was like that I could provide something at a cheaper cost than everybody else, but I could also make money at the same time and invest what I had. So my nature has always just, that wasn't ever taught to me. That was just what I did. So part of it, of the way we both are, is part of it was by our nature, and part of it was by upbringing. So usually it's a combination of the two. So so you can see that there was two different mindsets coming into a covenant where it's best to have one mindset. And so you could see where there might be some conflict go on early on in our marriage. So, but it ended up working out well, at least so far. So we're not done yet. She's still working on me. But it is a journey, though, because it's a journey until we pass on. We've never really arrived. I mean, even the richest guy in the world, you could argue, well, he's arrived and stuff like that. But the reality is, everybody can still learn, and everybody can still do more. And even if you have $1 billion, you can always learn to manage that money better. And I think obviously God is a very smart money manager, and so very good at things. He created math, he created finance. These things just didn't happen. He's the one who designed the world and everything in it, including math. So we can always do better, and really we're only going to optimize our management abilities when we listen to the Holy Spirit, but also use things like math and stuff like that. So with that, I'd like to say, let's go on to the next milestone in our life. So we were both individuals, And then Sarah, what happened?
Then we got engaged. We were in college and we got engaged, and it might have been like soon after we got engaged, we were given a book called The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. Yeah, we're Dave Ramsey nerds. We like we like listening to him, and you know,
and it
he's
had the word makeover in it too. So I mean that kind of bought her into the whole. Not that she needs one.
No.
But you know, it kind of bought her into the whole book thing. So.
Yeah. So we read that book together, and you know, I know Pastor Bob and Deb encourage everybody to read a lot and to read together if you're married, and it's a great time together to learn and to grow. So we read this book and gained a lot of. Well, I gained probably more insight and knowledge than he did, but it was more of he got the framework, the idea of the framework and the plan that we needed to move forward and to make our marriage the best that we could in our finances. And it kind of gave us, you know, a process to agree on too, to meet in the middle, so to speak. I mean, you know, as a married couple, you're meeting in the middle, and one's, you know, giving a little, the other one's, you know, whatever. Compromise, I don't know. I don't really like that word necessarily, but anyway, so we read this book, and it gave us the framework to get out of debt, I guess. Am I talking about that here? Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess we're down here, but when we got married, we both had student loans. I mean, it wasn't astronomical. We both had scholarships and that kind of thing, but it was a good chunk. And then we also had a car loan. He got me a new car shortly after we got engaged.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. We still have that car today, just so you know. That was 11 years ago. But, you know, it helped us to be on the same page to kind of attack that debt and to get rid of it as quickly as we could. But the earlier you can get on the same page, the better, because, you know, we went our whole lives until we were, 23 when we got married, I think. You know, living different ideas on financial stewardship. What?
Sorry, I just had to calculate
yeah. So, you know, we tried to get on the same page as soon as we could. Now, it's still, you know, we'll further our story here, but, you know, it still took us a little while, but this book gave us the framework on how to kind of make that happen and how to communicate through the whole process of budgets and that kind of thing. Is there anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, just deciding to be on the same page. I mean, and that needs to happen as early as possible. So even if you're, I mean, we just had Dan and Ashley, they just got married. So, I mean, it's never too early to start, because we read this book when we got engaged. And, you know, I think that's the best thing to do, but it's never too early to start to get on the same page. Because, you know, the biggest cause of divorce is money fights and money problems. So if you can eliminate the biggest concern there, then, you know, things will be a lot better. And it impacts so much of your marriage. I mean, just because, I mean, it's resources. Money enables you to do things, and so it impacts your whole life.
Do you want me to go into like more of the specifics of what we learned from the book?
Sure.
Okay. So I think the first thing that we learned was to build up. They call it emergency fund. I think you coined it the Joseph Fund. Mm-hmm. So saving up in the years of plenty in case there is a famine, you know, which obviously we're not believing for that, but you want to be prepared for times that may be a little rougher than what you're used to. So that's one thing the book taught us to do. It taught us about, you know, debt and being the borrowers, the servant to the lender, and he also taught us that, you know, when you're out of debt, you can look at the world differently because you're not paying, you know, interest on things. You've got more money to do other things, you know, that God calls you to do. And then also saving for a house payment and taking care of your household first, I guess, is one of the other main things. So.
Yeah, and if you listen to him very much, I mean, he talks about living like no one else so that later you can live and give like no one else. And so it's just a temporary time period that which you can set yourself up for life, basically. It might be temporary pain, which, you know, for us it wasn't too bad, but it yields a harvest after that.
And I think the thing that he kept on reminding me, you know, I'd get frustrated, like, well, no, we're not going to go do this. It wasn't a major thing, but it was like he'd remind me, you know, we're going to live. How's it go?
No one else.
Live like no one else, so later we can live and give like no one else. Like, we want to give more, right? And sow more into God's kingdom. So that was a big thing that I had to remember, that even though it was might have been frustrating to me more so than him, you got to remember the end goal that's in sight. So
Yep.
that was encouragement to me.
Yeah, and I think financially speaking, I think the church as a whole tends to focus on giving. They focus on tithes and offerings. They don't, and I drew my lovely pie charts up here. But actually, where are those markers there? Over there? Okay. And I think we tend to focus on, I just need these. Thank you very much. And we tend to focus on, and I say we, I mean the church as a whole, we tend to focus on tithes and offerings and giving and stuff like that, which is really, I mean, as you can see here, this is roughly to scale. I don't have Microsoft Excel up here, so just don't give me a hard time, all right? But basically, this is about 10%. And, some of us may give 5% over that, maybe 10% over that, some more, if you're able to. But the reality is, the church as a whole focuses on the minority of your actual wealth and your actual income. And I think that really holds the church as a whole back, is because we're teaching a lot about this, but we don't teach about the remainder of this pie, the remainder of your income and the remainder of your expenses. And the reality is, I think a lot of people aren't, perishing for not doing this. Actually, probably the majority of Christians don't tithe, so maybe that's not a fair statement. But even if you do tithe, I think that the majority of people don't experience the prosperity that they can experience is because we're not always applying God's principles to this other, 80, 90%, whatever it is. And so you have to have a combination of it. The tithe is holy and it's separated and it's sanctified, but the reality is every single dollar that you bring in is God's. It's all set apart. It's all God's. The 10% is God's, the 90% is God's, and God doesn't just leave us hanging on what to do with this big portion. I mean, He's got those things. He instructs us in His Word on how to handle that. And so God obviously wants to put His super on our natural, but if we're not handling the natural part of, when I say natural part, I'm talking non-giving stuff. If we're not handling that well, then He doesn't have a lot of stuff to put His super on our natural. So to fully utilize, what God has in His Word, you have to apply His Word to the entire pie, to the whole 100%. Because if not, you might struggle. I mean, that's just the way it is, because it's the majority of your income here. And then obviously that's not to say that you can't get harvest and stuff like that from your offerings, or the windows of heaven pouring out because of tithing and everything. But if you don't manage this well, how He wants you to, then you have to be faithful in little to be faithful in much. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time on that today, but yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about that for now. So our next milestone that we had was
when we got married. So when we got married, we didn't probably have our stuff all together. I mean, he had the stuff together. We didn't meet on a monthly basis. To say that I didn't care about the finances, I don't think is true, because I did. I wanted to do what was right, but we didn't really converse about it a whole lot. I mean, we'll get into a little bit later, what our MO is now on finances, but he basically just handled everything when we got married, and I was fine with that. I wasn't, he's the math nerd, so I want to just let him handle it. You come into a marriage with, everybody has their strengths, so I just thought, well, his strength is financial planning and handling the finances, and my part is spending, shopping.
We complemented each other very well.
Yeah. I mean, we came from two ends like that, and as we get deeper into godly wisdom and our finances, we meet more in the middle, and sometimes it's down here a little bit more where we meet, and sometimes it's over here a little bit where we meet. But anyway, so he basically handled the thing, all the finances, and I didn't have any idea what was going on, really. I just knew things were okay, and that was fine, but we realized that wasn't really God's best for us, and we both needed to be on the same page and need to understand what was going on. Not that we ever thought anything bad would happen to either one of us, but now that I think about it, what if something bad did happen and he wasn't able to take care of the finances? I would have been clueless. I'm not saying that's the reason why we have to be on the same page, but there's just, there's wisdom in things, and you need to understand what's going on. So during the first couple of months, I got on a clothing budget. That was basically the extent of our budget. Was I had a clothing budget, which was fine because
there was a reason for that too.
Yeah, because when we got married, I wanted to go shopping every Saturday. That was what I was used to, and he was like, "You're not shopping at all." So again, we had to kind of meet.
Just to be, hold on.
That was basically it.
Hold on a second here.
That was that's what it felt like. Okay, let me be fair. That's what it felt like because I was
in reality.
That's what it felt like. I'm just being honest, but so that was basically the extent of our budget, and it wasn't, that wasn't the place where we needed to be. So you can go ahead and take over and defend yourself now. Sorry.
I don't know. I feel kind of put down right now, so I don't know if I can talk.
I'm sorry.
But and I partially, 90% blame myself for not being on the same page when we were. We read the book. We both understood the process and everything. But there's a big difference between knowledge and behavior. And we didn't behaviorally do what we were supposed to do. And part of that was, being on the same page, talking every month, which I don't know why, but that's like an uncommon thing to do. But to talk, period, yes. But specifically about finances every month. And it was hard. It really was at the beginning. We were probably the first 3 to 6 months or so. You've heard of World War I and World War II, and World War III had come along at that time, and it was rough. But there's good reason for that, right? Because you got two different opinions, and you're both not on the same page, and you're working towards getting an agreement. And so there might be some compromise on things. There might be some absolutely no, we're not going shopping every weekend. We can go some weekends, but we're not going to spend thousands of dollars on vacations right now because honestly, we didn't. Even if we had the cash for it, we don't have the money for it.
And that's something I had to learn the hard way because if it's there, I feel like we can do it, but it's not always a smart thing to do it.
Right.
I guess.
But the reality is, and this might step on people's toes, but if you have debt, you don't have the money for that kind of stuff. It's just there,
I know.
Because really, you're still the servant to somebody. The borrower is servant to the lender, and you're effectively borrowing money to go on vacation or do whatever else. And God instructs us not to be in debt. And I'm not saying that debt's a sin. I'm just saying that it's not God's best for us to be in debt because, He in His part of His blessing in Deuteronomy 28 is that, that you would be the lender and not the borrower. And the part of the curse is borrowing and not being the lender. So, He wouldn't tell you that you're blessed if you lend when it's a sin. So being in debt is not a sin. It's just not what God desires for us. The first few months were a little rough, but we ended up working through it. It was rough for both of us. I don't know.
I was the only one that cried, though.
Get all our dirty laundry out there. I made my wife cry.
It was frustration. It's not that he was being mean to me. It was just me being frustrated.
I just hid my tears. So.
Yeah. It was just frustration because we were still trying to meet in the middle, and we were, knocking heads. And we wanted the same thing, but it was just the principles of, it was how we were going to get there. It was tougher for me, I guess. The road to that end.
Yep.
So.
And one of those ends was being debt-free. So, like Sarah said, when we were married, we both had student loans, which really looking back, it wasn't that much. I thought it was a lot at the time, but it was. I think we both had about $11,000 each, which is not a lot in this day and age. So, very thankful for scholarships. and then we had a car loan and stuff like that. And so we went intense. And by the time we were 24 roughly, then we had paid off everything, and so we were debt free at that time. It's very difficult to pay for a house cash, so we ended up taking out a mortgage when we bought our first house. So we're still, our only house. So we're still working on that. But it was a milestone in our life, and I got to tell you, when you're completely out of debt and like there's not money going in one way and then coming out the other, I mean, just everything feels different. Like your cars drive different if you own them. I mean, they might not necessarily mechanically drive different, but I'm just saying it feels different when you're driving it. It's like, yeah, I own this. And when we pay off our house, you go out I can imagine you go out in the backyard, your grass is going to feel different on your toes just because you actually own it now. It just feels different, and I don't know how to describe it other than it just feels different when you just pay it all off. So
well, there's more security in it too. I mean, from my standpoint, when you have that paid off, then for sure it's yours. And
yep. And the other thing is your biggest wealth building tool is your income, and so it's very difficult to build wealth when you've got income going straight to payments. So instead of building wealth and having things appreciate, it's going in one area and going out the other, so you don't have any money left over or I shouldn't say any, as much money left over to save or invest or have any opportunities that come up that you can actually make your money grow. So like when we were getting out of debt, I mean, we were tight on things, but looking back, we probably weren't quite as tight as what we should have been to really push for it and to get out of debt. But because we lived comfortably during that time. It's not like we were eating ramen noodles every night and on beans and rice, as Ramsey likes to put it. But we had a goal, and we went as quick as possible to try to get that accomplished. So, and it takes patience to do that, right? So, when you want something and you want this fancy new car, and like they come out with a new Lamborghini, and you don't have the money for it, and I'm not going into debt to do it, and somewhat facetious about that, but the reality is, I mean, we weren't going to go into debt for stuff, and so sometimes that's you're saving up. Sometimes you're just waiting for the right thing to come along, and a lot of times when you draw that line in the sand and say, I'm going to pay cash for this, it allows for the right deal to come along, so you don't rush into something. And there's been multiple occasions on that, but I think cars and
I think it's been mostly cars, and well, really with our house too, because we lived over in North Peoria when we were first married, and I wanted to go house hunting. We went and looked at the houses in Dunlap. I'm like, let's move to Dunlap. Like, let's do this. Let's buy a house. And I'm so glad we didn't. We were patient, and our house opened up to us, and it kind of fell in our lap, I guess. But I mean, I never dreamed that would happen, but we were patient, even though I didn't want to be. And the same thing with our cars too. Like, just by nature, I feel like we wait a little bit longer than what we need to, but every time we've waited and been patient, like, it's always worked out in our favor. And most of the time it's above and beyond what I even thought we could get, and it feels good to be able to pay cash for stuff and not have to worry about owing on it, so it's kind of a double bonus.
Yeah, and I think the other thing with patience, I think to some extent everybody likes to put on a facade. Like, you want to present yourself as more prosperous than you really are, to be blunt with it. Believers and non-believers do it. Maybe sometimes we want people to think that we're blessed, or quote blessed, but the reality is you're not blessed if you go out and buy a car but you've got a car loan on it. I mean, let me retract that statement. You are blessed. However, it's not a manifestation of the blessing to go out and buy a car with a car loan on it. That might...
It's not that makes you blessed. It's not having that car that makes you blessed and having the loan on it.
Yeah, it's the loan that's not part of it. So, and I think we just have to be patient. That is one of the biggest financial attributes to your success and money and matrimonial money, regardless if you have a rich spouse or not, is that you be patient. One of us, could potentially win the lottery this week, and the patience. You don't have to be patient then very much. So, but no, I'm kidding, because it's actually most people. Yeah, most people lose all their money that win the lottery. But why is that? It's because of a behavior. But you'd have fun at the same time, right, Aaron? So that's what I would say, just about being debt-free. It's like you have to be patient to not only get debt-free, but also to stay debt-free, because there's always going to be an opportunity to go into debt. It's very easy to get into debt, but it's very difficult to get. It takes time. You can get into debt like that, but it can take years to actually get out. So.
Yeah, and it's something that, I don't think the patience is as much an issue for him as it is for me. And like, I'm still trying to teach my kids and myself about patience. And it's the simplest phrase that we use with them is wait happy. And it's so good for adults too. You have to wait. You have to be joyful in what you have and be content with what you have, which, like I said, I'm still struggling with that. And I'm still trying to teach myself that. But, just wait happy, be joyful in the position that you're in right now and what you have right now, so you can wait on what's right for you.
Yep. So we've talked about when we got engaged. We've talked about that we got married and how the kind of different things, and before we were married, and how kind of we viewed money and how we approached money management. The next milestone, obviously, that's big in your life after you get married is
having kids.
You have kids. So
yeah.
We obviously our kids, so that's kind of the next milestone in our journey. So
yeah. So when we had kids, I think we got a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I think it was probably after we had Lily. I think we both kind of came to the realization that we need to get a little more intense in our conversations and meet more regularly. I, for one, felt like I was floundering a little bit because of, once you have a little girl, it's like you just want to buy everything that's cute and ruffly. And, so I enjoyed it, but I knew I was probably spending too much. It wasn't totally out of control, but I felt like deep down I needed some sort of control, and I probably couldn't do it myself, So, we're a team. Yeah, we're a team, and so we need to work together on that. So that's when we more started the monthly meetings, and it was hard. Coming to an agreement and meeting in the middle. And, when you have kids, you're spending a lot more. And, it's not just when you have babies, because you're spending money on diapers and all that kind of stuff, but kids can get really expensive. And, so we had, since we got married and since we had kids, we'd not grown apart, but we'd probably digressed a little bit from our goal as a married couple. So we had to get back on the same page, and we had to tighten down a little bit. And even though, again, it was sort of frustrating for me, I still knew what the end goal was, and I had security in that, knowing that if we tightened up, we would be in a good place, and it wasn't going to be a permanent thing that we were going to have to tighten up, but that we weren't going to struggle. So I was encouraged by that, even though it was frustrating at the same time. Sometimes, I still knew the end goal and that it was going to be good in the long run. So, and we learned to be flexible with each other, definitely.
Yeah. So that's really when we talked about World War III earlier. That's when that happened, and after 6 months or so, we got on the same page on. And when we say monthly budget meetings, so let me define having a budget. So a budget is something that's, number one, it has to be written down. And it can't just be like, I make $5,000 a month and I have $4,900 in expenses. It needs to be line item by line item, call out what you plan to spend in every single area. And number one, so it has to be written down. Number two, if you don't meet monthly on it, even now, like occasionally we'll skip a month just because we're busy and it just kind of falls off our radar. Like, yeah, I know I'm confessing my sin before the congregation right now.
And get this, it's usually the month that I go over on spending.
Yeah, and so, case in point. So, but, so even now, like, if you don't meet every month, there's a tendency to, not just her, but even me. I mean, I'm a saver, obviously, like I said earlier, but sometimes if you don't keep track of it, you're not gonna do the right thing. So.
Well, and things change month to month too. Yep. Like if you look at, if you're spending for birthdays or birthday parties or vacation or whatever. I mean, so things change for us. Even though we have like the main things written down, there's still other things we have to change, and so it's just a good practice that we try to stay in.
Yep. And when you meet, it's not. I guess I'm going to pull the audience here. You don't have to. But if you meet on a monthly basis and you're proud of it, and you're proud of it, and I'm just curious, like, how many people do? Joey, you meet on a monthly basis with your wife? Yeah. Good boy. He's by faith. Yeah. Okay. Good. So, and like, I think the key when you meet on a monthly basis is to be flexible with your spouse, and I bring that up, and we've brought it up a couple times. But the reason being is that whenever you meet, and I talked about World War III, the reality is it was between us, but the enemy is not your spouse. It's in the financial area. The enemy is lack, the enemy is poverty, and the enemy is debt. I mean, though that's the enemy, it's the friendly, the friend is financial success, and the enemy is debt, is poverty. So just keep in mind that you're both going against the same enemy, and it's not each other. I think that's really key, because sometimes multiple times we've kind of fallen into that trap before. So if you fast forward to now, and now, like I said earlier, we're in our 30s. We've had kids, and I would fully expect that we are done having kids, based on certain things that have happened. So right now, there's don't reveal my health information. But those monthly budget meetings, it used to maybe go like an hour or something like that when we were having the war, and but now honestly it's more like a check-in. Like it takes literally 5 minutes. Everybody, we both have the same expectations. We know what we do every month, and we have an idea of what's coming up this next month. And it's honestly, I think you described it the best last night, that it's just a check-in. It's 5 minutes, and it's nothing, really. So it took work to get to that point, and we are always flexible with each other. So like this year, we got our eating out budget went up. I mean, so I know it's a big deal. Grocery budget, went up this year and everything. So you just over time, you kind of you come. What's that? Yes, they do, exactly. So, but it does go up higher than inflation, Grandma. So just to be fair. But so you get more comfortable over time, and you can loosen things up, and you're in a good spot. And so, like I said earlier, we're out of debt. We'll never go into debt again. We've got Joseph Fund built up, 6 months expenses at least, and we still have the monthly budget meetings. We've kind of become more, maybe I've always been like this, but we've kind of become more like minimalist on things. I don't know if you guys know, like minimalist is basically like simpler is better, kind of less less things are better just as principles. It doesn't mean that you don't have anything. We still have furniture, don't worry. What's that? You know, it's... Wait, what's going on here?
Nothing.
I don't like what's going on here.
Sister wife just came in. It's fine.
Yeah, what's up? But we appreciate simplicity, and I just like simple things. You know, if we try to keep our house very neat and tidy and everything, and honestly, the only way you can do that with kids is like just to have less stuff. I mean, the amount of stuff that people have for their kids, including us, is insane. Like, they don't need 1,000 toys. They really don't. Most of the time, they don't play with 90, yes, well, Paw Patrol, we need about 1,000 of those. But you don't need, we just appreciate quality over quantity. And if they really like something, they play with it forever. And if they're not playing with something, get it out. I mean, it's just out of here. And even with our stuff, if we don't use it for, like, say, a year, that's the kind of rule or thumb we're thinking of, that we just get it out of the basement. I mean, every year we go through our storage room at home, and we just get it out of there. So really appreciate simplicity. So this has really been annoying everybody this whole time, right? Because I haven't explained it, but it's been up there, right? Everybody's just been like, this is such an awesome drawing that you didn't know what to do with yourself. So if you haven't been listening because you've been focused on this, everybody's shaking their head no, I don't understand that. But now's the time to pay attention. So earlier I asked about how do you view money, and we're going to get into that in just a second. But I want to get into this. This is kind of, a financial. I was like, my butt feels a lot lighter. But for those who didn't see my my microphone fell off. So, all right. So this financial diagram. So these are credits, things that you bring in. So like your revenue, your pay, whatever. Return on assets would be anything in investments that you have, interest, income, rent if you've got rental properties, right? It's good stuff, right? And then you've got long-term liabilities, so that's anything like mortgage debt or credit card debt or car loan. And then debits are just kind of your monthly expenses, like if you rent, it'd be rent, power, electric, food, all those things. And so one of the things that really helps you manage your money well is not only having the budget, but also having kind of like your own personal balance sheet. And basically what that means is you keep track of your assets and you keep track of your liabilities. So assets would be things that you own. Liabilities would be things that you owe. And then obviously the difference between those two is your net worth. So, net worth, or they talk about the millionaire tax and stuff like that. And it's like, well, if you make $1 million a year, then, that's a millionaire tax. It's like, no, a millionaire is somebody who has a net worth of $1 million. It's not that you make $1 million a year. So just a little clarification if you hear that in the media and people are trumpeting that, it's kind of stupid. So, so this is your net worth. So I want everybody to pull out their dollar, or $5, or their $300 phone, or whatever it is. So when you buy something, I'll give you a little bit of insight of what goes on in my head. So let's just say this is, whether it's a $300 phone or whatever it is, let's just say that on this axis you've got the value of the item, so what it's worth, and then this, can you see this? This is Tim, or time, otherwise known as time, if I could write an E, correct? So value over time. And so before you buy something, this is just the way my mind works. Okay, let's just say you're not buying something, but it's just cash. So what do you think the value does over time? Let's don't worry about inflation for now. What does the value do? It just stays there, right? So if you got $100, it stays at $100, right? Now, so when you buy something, where does that go? It goes into your assets, right? So if you buy a car, that's part of your assets. If you buy a house, that's part of your assets. If you buy a computer, that's part of it. If you buy jewelry, that's part of it. And so how I view things, that when we buy things, there are some things that do this in value. Some things that go like this. So if it was the stock market last year, it went up like that. If it's, kind of interest in the bank, it kind of went pretty flat. You get like less than 1% now. It's not much, but it's better than flat. If you buy a car, guess what happens? It goes and then like that. So what do you think that's going to do to your net worth if you do this instead of that? It's going to go in the toilet, right? I mean, you're losing, and this isn't just gas and stuff like that. This is actual depreciation, what you can actually get for the car. Let's say it's a toy. So, you don't like that?
You have to take, this chart does not take into account intrinsic value and joy that you get from things.
Yeah, you got to
just
experience.
saying.
So like, let's just say you go to an amusement park. Obviously, this goes immediately to zero, but you get something out of it. So I'm not saying that if it goes down below this line right here, you can't do it. No, I'm not saying. This is just purely financially, purely dollar-wise. So let's just be clear with that. There we go. That help? All right. So like, what's a toy do? Basically, a toy kind of goes down to here, and then it just like goes to nothing, really. I mean, you end up, not that it's good to donate toys and everything, but what's that?
She said if they last.
If they last, yes, exactly. So, yes, that was a very good point, Grandma. So, I mean, one point you just end up throwing it in the garbage. So, but whenever, this is just how my mind works. Whenever we buy something, it's like, okay, well, what is it going to do? I mean, and I'm not talking about things like necessities, like food and stuff like that, because obviously that value goes to zero after you eat it, right? Well, some people might value what comes after, but if you're on a farm or something like that. But hey, you'd be surprised. It's pretty. Exactly.
He's
So
the one that values it a lot.
we got it in there. So, all right. So obviously, if you want this to go up, what do you need to choose to buy? Things that do this, right? It's pretty simple, but just kind of ask yourself before you buy something or before you go out to eat 5 times a week or whatever, that what is it doing? Because if you really want to prosper financially and be able to have a lot of money to give, you can't keep on buying stuff that does this. And that's what I'm talking about, this 90%, is that, you can do the 10% and, offerings on top of that and everything, but if all you're doing is buying stuff that does this, you're not going to prosper financially unless you buy a lottery ticket like Rob did and win the lottery this week. So, okay.
We forgot to tell me it's
Okay.
Well, and to be clear, we understand that you need a car. It's just there's a different way to do it, so you don't go right at the begining.
Yeah, so like a good rule of thumb is that until this gets to be $1 million, you don't buy a brand new car. Because the reality is you can't afford to lose this unless your net worth is that much. So that's just a rule of thumb that Ramsey has. But so instead of buying it here and losing all this, maybe you buy a couple years into it and you save 50% of the depreciation. So that's something that we do. I drove my sweet baby blue 92 Camry from the time I was 15 until, how old was I in 2011? Yeah, we'll just, upper 20s, we'll call it that. I mean, I drove that car. That was the only car I had ever owned for over a decade. And why did I do that? It's because,
He's very patient.
yes, I'm patient. But, when you're driving that's cheap miles. I mean, you don't lose squat when you're driving a car like that. So, and then I was saving up that whole time, and you obviously know we pay cash for everything now. So, if you avoid this, you have the money to pay cash, and it's like it's a cyclical thing. And instead of going a downward spiral, you can actually go up. So, so how do you? All right, everybody, look at your dollar. We're gonna wrap it up here pretty soon because we still have a quick Q&A, and we have communion that I don't want to forget about. So, look at your dollar. I look at every single dollar that we have as a soldier to send out and accomplish a mission. So, also that I'm in good company because Mr. Wonderful, Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank, he also uses it that way. So, but look at every dollar that you have as a soldier that you're going to send out to war, to have on a mission, and you are the general of that soldier, and so you direct it. You're the one who tells it where to go. Whether it's investing, what happens? You send those soldiers out, what's it do? It goes recruits more soldiers. Okay? You want to increase your army. If you give to charity, say like to base or to feeding the hungry, what's that doing? You're changing lives with that. I mean, you could get a harvest off of that, but you're also investing in other people's lives. You're expanding the kingdom when you do that. Giving to ministries that have sowed the word into us, what's that doing? Well, that's taking your soldiers. You're giving your soldiers to another general to go out and accomplish a mission that he has. Where do you spend your money? I know this is kind of a controversial, but whenever you exchange dollars for a product, you're giving soldiers, which obviously you consent to that because you buy it, but you're giving soldiers to whoever. And what are they going to do with your soldiers? Are they going to use it to expand God's kingdom, or are they going to use it to degrade God's kingdom? When you buy something, are you sending them into a war that's a high casualty situation where, it's going to end up doing this, and you're going to lose those? So what happens after you buy it? So all these things, when you look, at your bank account, if you're just completely digital now, or if you have dollar bills in your wallet, all those numbers, those are soldiers that you send out to do something with. Now, everybody look at your bill. Now, you don't have to answer, but look at your bill. Does it, with that in mind, and for everything we talked about today, does it look differently? Do you have a different plan for those bills? And with that, I think we'll go ahead and go to Q&A because I think we're running out of time. So I gave you forewarning about an hour ago that I was going to hold you hostage to lunch unless you, awesome, Caleb's got some questions, unless you ask questions. So, Mr. Caleb, would you like to start us out today?
Okay. So, does it have to be related on the topic?
Yes.
Okay. So, you were a big spender when you were younger. How many
Is this a question for Sarah?
Yes.
Okay.
How many pairs of shoes did you have? I'm guessing a lot.
Like now or like before?
You spent like
I probably had a lot of shoes, a lot more than I do now. Because like he said before, I value quality more, so I buy like fewer, nicer shoes, more expensive. And so does he. He buys,
Yeah, and kind of going along with this, what's it do? It's like when you buy it, well, it pretty much goes down like this, and so that's another reason to have less than more, have higher quality, because things with higher quality tend to hold their value longer too. So, good question. Bree.
How long do you think it took you to get like your numbers on track? Like, were you guys like a year, 2 years? Did it take you, to get? Because like right now, we're kind of just in the beginning stages. Being one, two. So like we're still switching around a lot of our not our main bills, but like clothing.
The necessities,
like,
right? Yeah.
Like the extra things, groceries. We're still like up and down, adding. Trying to figure that out. How long did it take you to get your numbers pretty much figured out?
I mean,
a consistency.
Yeah, it did take a little while, and it takes a little while to kind of agree on things too, because, let's say I only wanted to spend $400 a month or something on groceries back in the day. It's like, well, I don't do the grocery shopping, so she would go and shop and everything, and if she's shopping at Aldi's and not going out and buying gourmet, whole food, organic, everything in sight, and you're not making it, then you obviously need to up it some. So, I mean, it took a little while, but the other point with that is too, most of our incomes change, like at least yearly, right? I mean, in my company, they typically give out raises once a year. So, and I say raises, thankfully it's typically raises and it's not decreases. But so that gives you a little bit of room to kind of expand some things that you want. But I would say at least, 6 months. I don't know if but it just depends. And it is somewhat more difficult if you have an inconsistent income. But what you do is just during the time of plenty, what do? You do what Joseph did. He had 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. You save up during those 7 years of plenty. And so you kind of just have to do a bare necessity in your line items as far as, okay, this is what we have to do to live. This is what we have to do, mortgage payment. We've got food, shelter, clothing, basically. This is the minimum that we have to have for that. That's going to be there every month, regardless of what your income does. So if you're above this average, say like your necessities are this, and if your income's going like this, then obviously during this time frame, you got to be socking stuff away for this time frame. So, does that make sense? Okay. Would you like to add anything to that?
I don't know if this is totally related, but I just kind of got to thinking. I think his shoe question got me thinking. Like when you're on a budget and you have a certain amount to spend in a certain category, then I feel like it makes you count the cost more. Like I'm just thinking about shoes. Like I just don't have as many shoes. Well, one pair of brown boots, one pair of black boots is enough for me. Like I don't have to have several different styles in each color. Like you just have to think, what do I really need? And then, because you have to base it off of what you have to spend. So I feel like limiting yourself or getting yourself on a budget really makes you count the costs and understand what you really need, or if it's just a want, or it helps you categorize those things. Yeah.
On a serious, did you teach my wife that?
Ooh.
On a serious note, with this management, is there an age limit where you reach a point where you're too old for this management work?
Do you want me to take it?
Would it work for
No.
your grandparents to start doing it now?
Yes. 100%.
It's based on
And
God.
because it's based on godly principles and it's based on math, which those things don't change. I mean, if 2 + 2 ends up equaling 5 someday, then we can talk again. But which I guess in philosophy sometimes that does happen, but we'll put that beside the point. I knew that was going on in your head. So, but no, really, it doesn't change, and it's literally never too late to do this. And obviously, if you do start younger, then it gives more time for compound interest to work in. So, to be fair, that it is the case, but it's never too late to start exercising godly principles and exercising, budgeting and math and balance sheets and stuff like that. So.
Your shoe days are over.
No.
Oh,
No, that's
man.
not what
If
that's
knew
not
that
what we're
was the
saying.
intent, I wouldn't have answered the question.
Doesn't Dave Ramsey, sorry.
So you're already in debt, you have credit card debt or whatever. So should you be saving money at the same time, or should you be putting all that money towards the debt?
So if you go by the way like Total Money Makeover book says, then what you do is you save up $1,000, put that in the bank account, in a safe, whatever, and you don't touch that unless you have an emergency. So an emergency would be my tire blows and I have to go buy a tire to get to work to actually make money. That's an emergency. Emergency is not going out to eat or getting a new pair of shoes. So yes, there's debate among the people on that, but which I realize that. But you save up $1,000, and then after that, any extra money that comes in, you just attack the debt and get it. And the way he does it, he calls it the debt snowball, which basically you start, you go from smallest debt, not necessarily percentage interest, but smallest debt, and You pay that off, and then whatever money you were spending on there, you pay off the next largest debt, and then the next largest debt. And it gives you momentum. It gives you a sense of accomplishment when you pay off the smaller ones, because it's like, okay, I'm doing something here. It's working. So to answer your question, yes, you save, but only about $1,000 worth. And then you start attacking your debt, smallest to largest.
And then when you get rid of that debt, then that's when you can start doing your Joseph fund. And
Yeah, and so that's when you go above $1,000, which would be 3 to 6 months of expenses. So you need to know what this number is, because it's 3 to 6 times this amount that you have saved up then. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
How do you keep from having a poverty mentality while having a...
Good question. So let's define what a poverty mentality is. So a poverty mentality is, and this is I'm gonna use the word in the definition, so don't shout me down here, but a poverty mentality is simply anything that leads to poverty. So what does that mean? Okay, so if you think that you're going to get wealthy and get out of poverty by taking the hotel shampoo home and spending your time doing that, or reusing Ziploc bags, or reusing containers, or stuff like that, that is a poverty mentality. Not because I don't take the hotel shampoo home, because I actually do, but
that's partially my fault, because I forget to buy stuff for them sometimes. It's convenience.
If I look into the cabinet, we don't have any more soap. So, but I don't believe that I don't spend a lot of time and energy doing stuff like that. I spend my time and energy doing things that's going to do this. That's going to go up, right? So you're studying things like, okay, you're investing in certain things, or you're investing in 401k, Roth IRA. You're doing things that are proven to build wealth over time. And so
Because some people would argue, like, in the sense that, like, not necessarily maybe the budget as a whole, but just the idea of, you even throw in, like, God, believing God for the money to supply those things, but at the same time, you still have to have a baseline, so I guess it's come up with us even a few times where it's like, am I thinking too much on the fact that, like, we don't have this and that we aren't trusting that God is going to supply that? Or there's a lot that gets mixed up in there when you're doing a budget, just because your thinking changes a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's two kinds of fear. I mean, there's the fear that you're doing this because you think something horrible is going to happen and you're afraid, or you're doing it in faith, knowing that if you do the right thing, then you're doing the right thing, being godly principles, that this is going to work out for you.
Well, like you were here, you know the state of your flock. So that's, if you look at it like that, I'm just making sure I know what's, my things are in order and I know what's what. And
Yeah, and I didn't bring that up, so thank you for bringing that up. And a budget is not a something to beat over your spouse's head, or a budget. All it is, it's the B word, but all it is, it's a plan, it's a vision, and God tells you to write the vision down and give your soldiers their marching orders every month on what they're going to do. And I mean, can you do that in fear? Well, you could, but I think most people, when they see that they do it and they see that it's working and everything, they get confidence that, okay, God's principles do work, math does work, and that we're going to see what we want to see out of that. So
the other thing is too, like, you've reminded me, if I get frustrated, like, with what amount we have in one particular area of the budget to spend, he reminds me that it's permission to spend. It's not permission to not, or it's not holding you back. It's you have this money to spend, so you can go and do what you need to do with it. So if you look at it more of it's a permission to spend, then it kind of changes that mindset a little bit.
Yes, when I was talking earlier, I was trying to think of that phrase and I couldn't think about it. So thank you. You complimented me very well. So yes, the budget is permission to spend. It's not shackles. So.
I think it's all in your attitude of how you look at things too. Like
Yep.
you said, that's permission to spend.
know Dave Ramsey says the $1,000 for the
Yep.
emergency fund, but then is there a percentage for savings that should be your goal? I know we start out, if God honors and blesses the whole 90%
Yeah.
when we tithe the 10%.
Yep.
I mean, that's the very basics of
Yep.
the beginning. The 10.
It's
if
the top
you're
of your
tithing-
budget, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're
tithe is-
tithing, your 90% is going to be blessed because of that tithe. So is there a percentage that you believe in for savings once you get your debts, to that point where you're not, slave to the debt? Is there a percentage of savings then that you believe is adequate?
Yeah, so since Dave Ramsey is the man of the hour, he basically, that's his baby step, I think number 4, is that you save 15%. So 15% of this and this, everything coming into you, that's how much you save into retirement. So whether that's a Roth IRA or rental property or your 401k, Roth 401k, whatever, it's 15%, which it sounds like a lot, and it kind of is, because when you think about it, okay, you got 10% here, take another 15%, so that's immediately 25% that you don't have to spend on stuff like this that you need. So, but that doesn't happen until you're already out of debt, right? So you're not paying $200 a month for a car payment. Instead, you're putting that $200 towards things that do this instead of things that do this. So that's his percentage. Yes, sir.
We'll go back to poverty mentality just a minute.
Sure.
And by the way, I'm picking on my wife. Reality is I buy as many shoes as she does.
Such a girl.
The poverty mentality. My wife is the queen of taking advantages of self.
Mhm.
Okay? And I had somebody say, well, that's a poverty mentality. No, I don't think it is. I think it's good stewardship, because why pay this if you can buy the same thing on sale with this?
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I think if you go in there thinking, I can only buy from the sale rack.
'Cause I can
now
only
you are
afford
pushing,
that.
Yeah.
Poverty mentality. It's not that she uses the sale rack because that's all we can afford. It's just she spends the money wisely.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that I think you need to keep the two, don't get confused there, just because you're buying on sale
Yeah.
rack doesn't give you a poverty mentality. I think that's the
That-
only.
In the way I look at that, and that's absolutely correct, and the way I look at it, that is, you sell your time for a certain amount of money every hour of the day. And if you're clipping coupons and it takes you an hour to save, say $10, you just paid yourself $10 an hour. Now, if you save like 30% off at Kohl's and you're, saving,
That's another issue.
yeah.
That's a good example, though, of sales, though. I'll just interrupt you. I mean, Kohl's, if you look at their
Well, you did it.
original prices, they're like $75, where it would be $30 at another store. So there's no reason to go in and pay full price, especially there, when you get all your coupons and they have discounts and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's just being smart and just being patient, and because you can go in and when they don't have a coupon, you can pay a lot more,
And that would be an example of a poverty mentality if you're just clipping coupons and you're selling yourself for $5-10 an hour. I mean, it's just, you're not going to experience financial prosperity doing that. Now, do we use coupons? Absolutely, but
don't ever
the
clip
amount
them,
of
though.
time that we spend is not very much. So,
It's just the mailed ones.
yeah. Okay, I think we're out of time. So I appreciate. Let's talk afterwards, okay? So I appreciate everybody's questions, good questions, and everything. So I'm glad that you had some jogged your brains on some financial questions. So I think what we have here, communion right now. So